Cool. I believe this is working, I think, right? Okay, let me just go to YouTube and look to see what it looks like. I'm so sorry. Because I tried to do this late at night, so I wouldn't have to put you through this. Oh, yes, that's working. You can see me. Perfect. Okay. Yes, just the small little group of 30 odd of us or so. Should I should probably post about this, right? Sorry, let me get just situated a little bit. Um, cool, cool, cool. Katie's going to join me in a moment, and I will be playing some clips because I absolutely know how to do that now. Virgil would love to be here, but he's feeling a little bit under the weather, so he's taking the evening off while I work out some of the kinks here. Uh, but I'm sure we'll be doing this frequently now that I finally figured it out, sort of. This program is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Um, I don't know if you guys have been following. It's been a really crazy week on the internet. What do you make of? There's no right or wrong answers. This is a safe space. No one's going to be railroaded for having any kind of opinion about it. But what do you guys make of the whole force the vote discussion? The problem is that not this is Cat 83. The problem is not that anyone has personal vendettas, but it is more about people attacking others to be the official gatekeepers of the left. Yeah, I feel that. In a couple of exchanges I've had with people, and one in particular that I had on Katie's show, someone who I like and respect, said to me, you aren't the voice of the left. I'm like, oh dear, I certainly don't think that I am or pretend to be, but it seemed to reveal, perhaps some concerns that are going on in his own head, and also in the recent Benjamin Dixon clip that I was just recently made aware of. He says something about how I don't speak for Black people, and then went on to say that he does. And unlike him, I have never claimed to speak for any group. I articulate my own values, and other people share them, and that's kind of where we are. So, it's difficult to talk about these kinds of things, and you certainly don't want to be in a position where you're accusing everybody of having like ego or being ego or personality driven. But it's hard to ignore at a certain point when people keep lacing their arguments with these sorts of things. So, um, Katie should be here shortly, and in the interim, I'm going to not flag this on the internet until I really got my situation figured out. Um, I don't, this is supposed to be like allowing me to share the screen. I really want to be able to play clips. Oh, wait, 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 wait. Okay, share screen. I don't want to do any of those things. I want to share a QuickTime video because I clipped it already. QuickTime. Is that going to give me the option to share? I really do apologize. I did this late because I didn't want to draw anybody into this. Here we go. Cool. Oh, look at me. Look at that. Look at that. Guys. You didn't think I could do it, did you? Some comments. Oh, you think I haven't watched every live stream you've done this week? LOL, Kindle, stop. Yeah, I mean, I probably should stop saying yes to all of them, but honestly, on quarantine and also not having, like a 9 to 5, these live streams and being able to talk to people, it's like technically work, but it's also the only social outlet I really have these days. So I hope I'm not doing too much. Um, Straight up, you saw him straight up threatening to fight Dore. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Look, I'm not going to pretend. Obviously, we all here, I think, know that. And I said this to Jimmy. He knows he can be bombastic, and he has taken positions and arguments that I don't co-sign for sure. But just because he comes out swinging doesn't mean I think that everyone should adopt that same kind of pugilistic stance here. Bad faith, the object beside the roses is causing a glare on the camera. Oh, you guys don't like my candle? I thought I was doing a little bit of ambiance. No? It's a problem? I feel both sides of the argument have valid points, but I feel AOC saying they're doing things behind the scenes is pretty lame. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a point I was making on Jimmy Dore's show as well. I would be so glad to be proven wrong and to be told that they were doing all of these things, and that we were kind of blowing up their spot, and they just need the time to execute a plan, and they saw the potential of withholding the speaker vote, and they had vetted the idea, and that's all well and good, but I think that Jimmy Dore has a point when he says that some of the excuses as to why they weren't going to do it that were raised initially were so kind of like transparently bad that it made me have some skepticism that I might not ordinarily have had about these folks who I have a lot of respect for and have really been champions. I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because we disagree on this one thing, and I'm glad that there are people, even if they're taking an approach that I wouldn't necessarily take, like Jimmy, who are beating this drum and willing to be critical of figures and push figures that know very well because of their own activist roots how important it is to be pushed. I think the debate, this is Matthew Mead, I think the debate is really revealing a lot about the left. The same people that told us to vote for Biden before securing anything for our votes are now refusing to compromise on a more aggressive strategy. I presume the last word got cut off. Yeah, I mean, I really am not trying to be that person who's constantly bringing up the Noam Chomsky debate, but it's hard to ignore the parallels here. I don't know if you all listened to the latest episode of Bad Faith Podcast, but we talked to Slavoj Žižek about this very point. It's the same dynamic. We're asking folks if they're willing to take any risk, and the response tends to be no, not at all. Because what you're doing, if you follow it through, would result in Trump being nominated, right? If it was the vote withholding for Biden, or it might result in, Nancy Pelosi losing her speakership, which I'm still waiting for someone to explain why that would be the worst thing, or why Hakeem Jeffries, even if he's more to the right of Nancy Pelosi, would be worse if he actually has less power than Nancy Pelosi, Yeah, I'm really interested in this idea of risk taking and how much the left is ever really willing to hold in the balance. Because if the answer is nothing, then we're going to get nothing. There's a relationship between risk and reward here, that I think is getting really ignored. And it's part of also what I was trying to say to Chomsky that got really characterized as me doing identity politics. But me saying, there are a lot of people who are willing to take that risk because they've gotten the crappy end of the stick on this for so long, and they've already had the risks of voting for neoliberalism disproportionately weighted on them, historically marginalized communities, etc. And so for them, we might disagree, but the risk reward balance weighs much more in favor of just like giving it a shot, because the foreseeable future of doing things as we've always done them is terrible. It's not an option. Love you guys. Thank you, JAR Education. Schultze 100, totally great idea. We have a narrow window to make it real. Our brightest political minds in Medicare for All specialists should nail it out and decide. Yeah, and in this point, a dingo ate my baby is making about how AOC played nice and lost. I think details will continue to come out about what exactly happened there. But yeah, to the extent that the goal was committee assignments, obviously that didn't work. And I don't know if that was because of the comments that she made on Intercepted about thinking that leadership needed to go. in some ways, other people have made this point, but in some ways, she ended up with the worst of both worlds, right? Because she said the leadership needed to go, Nancy needed to go, without doing the thing that could actually oust her and have power, right? So you signal to her that you're not going to play ball without actually having, the threat ready to go, and so she could easily just be mad at you, punish you, and then now you've already said you weren't going to do the thing that would be retaliatory and actually extract some more power back. If AOC doesn't force the vote, how are we, the general public, supposed to know who to primary? I think that there are, arguments and counter arguments on this particular point that are perfectly valid. But to me, the downside of doing it is worth it, right? So to me, my main investment in this isn't necessarily to say, oh, this is the person we need to primary, although I think that is definitely part of it. My main concern is that I want to have a spark for a public conversation about this enormous gulf that exists between everybody who wants Medicare for all, 88% of Democrats, and the barely half of Democratic representatives who are willing to commit to the bill. That's what we need to expose, and there's no better time to expose that than in the middle of a global pandemic. I see that Katie is in the waiting room. You guys are sweet. Okay, here comes Katie.
1 second. I need.
Oh, sorry. Okay. My bad. Play the clip. Well, I was going to wait for Katie to play the clip. Is that okay? She says she's just 1 more minute. She's adjusting herself. On a vote that everyone knows will not pass the House, let alone the Senate, there's no reason for opportunists to not cast their vote for Medicare for all, even though they wouldn't vote for free. That's fine. That's completely fine. Excellent. But I also, to me, like, the potential downside of even one person not doing that is better than doing absolutely nothing. Like, again, and I don't know if you watched this conversation on Katie's stream the other night, but I kept asking a panel of very smart people who I respect a great deal, Natalie Shore and Adam Gaffney and Ben Burgess, tell me the downside. Because at the end of the day, you can punch holes in this plan, and it is not a flawless plan. But if you aren't able to tell me that there are downsides, that the cost is too high, given the enormous potential upside here, then there's no reason to do it. Even if the upside were teeny tiny, as long as the downside is even smaller, there's reason to do it. And the main downside that I've heard people articulate is, there'll be negative press. Oh, there'll be negative press about Medicare for all. Oh, the moderates will use this as a cudgel to say we're not ready for Medicare for all. People don't want Medicare for all. Well, guess what? That's what they're doing exactly now. Like, that's the whole point. The whole point that in any world, any normal world, maybe I should tweet about this. Should I tweet about this? Okay, give me just a second. Sorry. What I was saying, that in any normal world, if 88% of voters supported something and we were in the middle of a pandemic that exposed the extent to which we needed that something, it would be the media that was holding politicians accountable, and other politicians who, supported this program, who would be calling politicians out directly for their bad faith non-support. We don't have that. So we have to figure out some other mechanism to expose to the public how they're being misrepresented. And I think, yes, the media is not great. The corporate media is not great, but they can be provoked into doing the right thing. And I think you saw this a little bit with the Black Lives Matter protests, right? Like, all of those corporatists have every reason in the world to say, they're protests, it's violence, it's bad. And eventually a lot of them got there. But because of the way that liberals have kind of lifted up Black people in particular, and talked about how we need to trust Black women and how we need to support minority interests, and that's the real thing that distinguishes the two corporate parties from each other, they were at a little bit of a bind, and they kind of had to go along with it. And I think the same can be true of Medicare for all. If we stop, it's been, the way that Bernie has pitched this has been amazing, but also if we can also humanize it a little bit more in this moment, especially given everything that's going on in the world. And I've said this before, but do a exaggerated version of what Bernie did with the bus ride that he did I think back in the 90s, and then also again during the campaign, where he took a bunch of people in a bus to Canada from Vermont to buy insulin, which is, like 10% of the cost there as it is here. And we could have lines of people who can't afford the medication, who've had to raise money on GoFundMe to fund their healthcare, who've been devastated by COVID, at a podium in front of the Speaker's house, in front of other politicians' houses, in front of the White House, in front of Congress, giving their testimony. And you can build media events around things. And having Nancy Pelosi as a hook is a real boon, given how unpopular she is. I don't mean to repeat myself. Oh, Katie's ready. Hey, Katie.
Hi, how are you? Can you guys hear me? Beautiful. Oh, I look shiny. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling really empowered by running my own stream.
Yeah, right? It's like, I know. I'm sorry, I had to put some powder on my face. By the way, as people may or may not know, I don't have my phone. My phone isn't working. I'm locked out of Twitter. So I understand, though, that feeling I used to have before I got an easy setup to stream, which is this one, of like a real mental, I don't know. This is so first world problems, but just like not being able to express myself. And it's really hard. Oh my God, don't feel bad for me at all. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's hard. I'm so used to tweeting things out. I'm like, oh, let me share this. I can't. So I appreciate this opportunity. And I'm also glad that you have now you can just go out and, stream.
I think it could be kind of dangerous because for a while there, before I left my DC apartment, I was doing a lot of those like Instagram streams because it's the only way I could figure out how to get me and Virgil on camera together because I didn't know how to do this. And I got a little addicted to it. One, because it's just so easy. Two, because, there's filters.
Oh, yeah. Filters are good, yeah.
So it was a more flattering experience.
Oh, I see. Then stream, yeah.
You didn't have to, set up lights and, get yourself so perfectly situated. Right. And this could be dangerous. But, yeah, thank you for your help. This is surprisingly easy.
Right? Yeah.
So, Katie, you have not been on Twitter because you have lost your phone.
Yeah, it's like the most anticlimactic, like, Katie's been locked out of Twitter. It's like for literally losing her phone, but yeah.
But Katie, you can't log in on your computer?
No, the problem is I have the double factor thing set up, and the only way they can and I'm such an idiot because I didn't just toggle that thing, which is, apparently on your iPhone, you can be like, send me SMSs and non-SMS on my laptop. So I only get SMS, which means the factor verification thing doesn't show up on my laptop. It's all so boring. But anyway, I've ordered a new phone.
But also, how do you lose your phone on lockdown?
Nowhere. It was in the house.
Wait, so your phone's in your house somewhere right now?
Yeah.
Katie.
Oh, it's like, yeah.
But you live in Buckingham Palace?
No, but I live in a much bigger place than I would live in the city. You know what I mean? Like it's
fair enough.
So yeah.
That's hilarious.
And my parents have tons of books. It's not like a hoarder situation, but it's a very full-figured house situation, if you will.
But then I feel like you're almost the perfect foil to have here so that I can fill you in.
Yes, tell me. Yeah.
Going on. So, and
everyone should, everyone should check out my latest YouTube videos because they both feature Brianna Joy Gray.
Yeah, so the stream that I was referencing just a few minutes ago, it was long, it was like 4 hours, but Katie has very helpfully cut out, the most relevant, from my perspective, obviously the most relevant segments where I make my case and put them in 2 separate new clips on her channel. So
with more to come, but yeah.
More to come. That's why I will always say she's the hardest working person on the left. But here is a clip that I pulled. This one is secondary. Maybe I shouldn't do this one first, actually.
Up to you.
Maybe I should do.
When Green Compliments Machine means in left media, I don't want people to think that we're, pretending that there aren't organizers and.
Oh, sure.
Like that,
in left media.
Yeah. You like the way I didn't even push. I wasn't like, oh, no, stop it. I'm like, yeah, I'm the hardest working woman in left media. But anyway, I don't,
Okay, wait, how did I just do that before?
You have to do.
What did I just do?
Press.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You want to go to your share screen on the bottom? Oh, I can share
too.
It
was like.
You want me to do it? I can do it for you if you want. Oh, but I don't have that thing.
But this is, I just did it and I saw it and now it's, wait, stop sharing. And now I do,
That's
then
the
it
thing,
comes
yeah.
back. Okay. Okay. I got this. Sorry. I'm sorry, everybody.
Everyone give Brie a hand. This is her first time on. No, really, it's daunting.
Okay.
I've been using it for months, and as viewers may know, I'm constantly expressing frustration about it.
Okay. Here we go. I got this. Boom. All right. So this is the clip that has been the topic of some folks. I would like to shout out Nico for flagging this for me. I don't think I otherwise would have seen it. And I would like to just say,
Nico House?
Okay. Yes, Nico House. I like to just say I have had nothing but respect for Benjamin Dixon, and I was genuinely surprised by this. I didn't know that we had a complicated relationship, as he put it. The last DMs I have from him were him asking me to do like a Twitch stream thing with him. I have never had any public or private disagreement with him. Certainly, like all people, there are things that I disagreed with him about, but I kept it to myself because it really wasn't material. He was very much a supporter of telling people to vote for Biden, and I had much more nuanced feelings about that. But I respected his perspective. I understood why people were making that case, and I certainly never antagonized him for making that choice. So I was very surprised when I saw this.
Is the volume all the way up?
Oh, is it too quiet?
Yeah.
Ooh, that volume is all the way up. Is it? If I turn up my computer volume, does that make a difference?
Maybe.
Oh yeah, I can already hear it making a difference. Okay.
Great.
Your district is that. Understand something? There's a reason why there hasn't been a floor vote for reparations already, because it puts to now. Y'all want to win? Then build a coalition. Something that Bernie refused to do. Something that so many progressives across the nation refuse to do.
I do want to say this. The context of this is that you're talking about reparations and how, the left would be better able to put together a coalition that appealed to Black people if they supported reparations more full-throatedly, and if Bernie Sanders hadn't said he didn't support reparations back in 2016. And I agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think that there's there's a simplistic version of the argument that says Bernie Sanders supported Medicare for all even when it wasn't popular. Why doesn't he support reparations? Right. But I don't think that is entirely fair, because Bernie supported there's a difference there in the fact that reparations is not actually popular and healthcare for all is popular, and he's a populist. But I will say it's fair to criticize Bernie and others on the left for not doing more to make reparations popular the same way that they worked to make Medicare for all popular over time. So I think that it could very easily be popular, especially if we did more work of defining what reparations actually entailed. So I don't actually disagree with this part of the argument, even though they characterize me as the kind of person who would.
Build a winning coalition with Black folks. And how do you do it? You force Black folks in the corner by supporting reparations. God damn it, I'm trying to win y'all an election.
Bro, I just like, bro, I don't, we still going, listen, I forgot I got to be on the majority report at 12:15. So we still got a good 30, 45 minutes left. And I can leave y'all streaming. I'll jump in and do the stream. But I want to say this, and I do my best not to attack Black people on the show unless you're Barack Obama and Jim Clyburn, then I don't care. Other than that, I try my best not.
I'm in a fabulous crew there.
Yeah, seriously.
Jim Clyburn, Barack Obama, and Brianna Joy Gray. These are the enemies of the left.
Powerful people, yeah.
Folks and give them space. But Brianna Joy Gray has jumped into this conversation as well. And she is coming on the side of, like she traditionally does. Like, I have a complicated relationship with her in the sense of I consider her a colleague, but I also consider her wrong on a whole lot of issues. And this is the issue that she's wrong on. And she continuously is wrong on this issue. And she continuously serves the role as a Black person who would be the spokesperson for white progressiveness that has not done away with their white supremacy. That role was mine. And I obviously turned it down because fuck y'all. As a cudgel.
Okay, you hear that? That role was mine and I turned it down. So I'm not really sure what he means there. Does he mean literally like he thinks he should have been the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders, or is he speaking more metaphorically? I'm not really sure. I didn't apply to be the national press secretary for Bernie
Sounds
Sanders.
kind of monarchical.
They reached out to me, and I had to really debate it because I really loved being a journalist. I loved having journalistic independence. I loved being at The Intercept. I started being a writer because of my own individual personal beliefs. I didn't do it for money. Trust me when I say every job I've taken since I left the law firm has made me less and less and less. So that's really not the issue. But I thought that was a little bit of an interesting tell.
It's other Black folks. And I'll simply say that that's not really a game, Bree, that you should allow them to play with you, one. But then two, that's not really a game that y'all want to play with any of us white progressives. Y'all, I don't care how many Black folks y'all throw up at us. It's like Pokemon. Go Black progressive, go. I don't care. Throw them up. At the end of the day, we represent the Black voices. We represent way more Black people than Breonna Joy does. So if you're placing your bet on her, it's not a good bet. She's a good person, but it's not a good bet.
So, yeah.
I feel like I'm just setting you up though, because people are going to be like, here she is being used by a whitey progressive. Yeah.
So let me just say this. Katie's here because she's teaching me how to use the StreamYard. This wasn't supposed to be the Ben Dixon hour. But I'll just say then, without getting your white cosign, Katie, that I don't think it's productive to call anybody, grifter, and you're doing this for the clicks and all of those sorts of things. Or you're keeping for other people, like steal, as Senator Turner always calls it, they're always trying to take our agency away. They're always trying to take Black women's agency away. And I think that's right. I feel like there's nothing I could do to make you believe that my opinions are my own. And even when it's people like Candace Owens, who, there's a documented history of her being like a liberal and then like switching sides when it seems to have like benefited her professionally. Like, there are so many substantive reasons just to criticize Candace Owens that I'd rather just do that, because I know that there's a slippery slope of these kinds of like ad hominem arguments that just, they're not as persuasive. Just say the thing. Candace Owens has garbage opinions. Just say the thing. Because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. He obviously can't just address my argument. So I'm a tool of someone else. But then also he switches. I'm Black, so he can't say that. He switches from going like, they're throwing all these white progressives at us. It's like white people versus Black people who hate Jimmy Dore. But the fact of my Blackness forces him to like make me white, and or make me somehow a traitor to my own race. And it's like, this is literally the exact same thing that Jason Johnson did. It's literally the exact same thing that every white liberal, or not white, just every liberal does when they're confronted with a Black person who has more progressive beliefs than they do, and who they can't just lord their moral authority over or identity over because they are also Black.
Yeah, I think that there's an echo. I don't know if it's me or I think it is me, which isn't good. Let me see. Sorry about this. Oh, okay. I don't want to, although maybe I could just hold the space, be silent. Hold on. Is there an echo now? No, right?
I don't hear it. Are people saying it?
Someone watching this told me there was. Hey, friend watching this, is the echo still there? Let me try it this way. Hold on. This week is not a good tech week for me. Okay, now can you hear me? Hold on.
Yeah, it's still there. It says cloudy skies now. I need to turn my volume back down.
Hold on a second. Snapson mic. Okay, now can you hear me? Yes, no?
Brianna is the echo they're saying. Is it because my volume was so loud? Here, I turned it down. Is that better?
Oh, right. Maybe that's it.
Like maybe they were hearing you through?
Because you were amplifying me because I'm white.
As is my want.
As is your want, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would just say that you're someone who has very kind of consistent political views, which I think makes it kind of offensive and infantilizing and agency eliminating to suggest that it's because you're acting you're doing someone else's bidding. And, you can, hopefully one can critique it on the substantive level, as opposed to like the function it serves, because, and you're happy to debate with people and debate your ideas.
Happy. I was in fact I was planning on reaching out to Ben to come on Bad Faith to talk about it, because I wanted to invite someone who had an opposing position. I was also thinking about inviting someone from, Majority Report. Although I will say that it frustrates me sometimes that this is now the second issue that has gotten a lot of play on their show after the Chomsky debate that, I'm at the center of in a lot of ways. Not this, I'm not Jimmy Dore, but, have been a substantial contributor to, and, they haven't really expressed any interest in using their show as a forum for debate. And I miss it. I miss Michael Brooks. I miss that he was always like such a friendly voice there. And so that has been a little bit of frustrating as well, because I don't think we should have had all of this fighting. Like, this crosstalk all week has not been necessary. I really want to commend you, Katie, for having people with different perspectives on your show, because once we were all in the same room talking, like, it felt like we sorted it. And I just was on David Perota's stream earlier tonight. And, to the extent that there was any confusion about any gap between our views, it was with him and Justin Jackson, we sorted it.
Right.
And it felt like safe, and like we all respect each other and we all love each other. And we know that we're sharing the same goals. And I truly don't understand how we got here. Like, I truly don't. And I'm so sincerely disappointed. I'm not like that bothered. I'm not upset by it. I'm just really confused and disappointed.
Yeah, I also think that I don't know what people's opinion of Cornel West is, but he agrees with Jimmy and you on this. He did a stream earlier today with Jimmy. So I don't know if the caping for white people applies to him, or if he has much more bona fides so that he's not subjected to that. Right. I mean, I'm sure there are people who critique him for that, but he went hard for Bernie. But again, I just think that and also, if you're colleagues, I think you can disagree on a substantive level. She says you are, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and that's the other thing I just want to say, and I tweeted this. There are so many moments where I disagree with people, other leftists. And some people might think that it's wrong for me not to say that out loud and that I'm like covering for people or what have you. But I just weigh the cost benefit analysis of like, who is this helping? And does this undermine my credibility with groups that I need to be on my side for a much bigger fight down the line? You know what I mean? And I just don't say anything. Like, there was a point at which, Nathan Robinson and Crystal Ball were fighting about whether she should do a show with Sagar. To be honest, I agree with Crystal. I tended to agree with Crystal, but like, why weigh in? Like, who cares? Like, who cares? Nathan's a big boy. He was handling his point. He was making a good, he was making his case. I understand where he's coming from. He's not, there's substance to his beliefs. But I think that Crystal's show is great, and it's influencing many more people to the left than to the right. And she's very talented, and she's that good. I consider them both my friends. Why does everyone feel like they have to weigh in on every issue, every like internecine lefty battle, when it just makes people be like, oh, you're the one who betrayed me on this, and you're the one who like said this thing about Tulsi. Like, it just becomes a mess. Yeah. So just like, I saw Ben making his arguments all week about this. I disagree with them. I thought about, having him on to have a conversation about it, but not like Twitter swiping about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and you take a lot of crap. You're called the Candace Owens of the left. You're called Diamond and Silk, which is they're awful, but they're very entertaining. So that's maybe bodes well for you in your more creative endeavors. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of, and the grifter accusation I've always had problems with, because I don't know what it is. I don't know how you define it. When people say that someone's doing it for clicks, I just think it's an unnecessary thing to say, especially when people could get more money, putting forth other arguments.
Yeah. Or I don't know, going back to being a very well-paid attorney, right. Guys, like, I promise you, like, this is not lucrative.
Right.
And you know, my financial advisor does not love that I no longer have a 401k.
I need a financial advisor.
Well, I don't use mine anymore because they were, you know, back at the firm. But I'm not at their level anymore.
Right.
So when I was listening to the video, because I wanted to listen to it in context, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't out of context. Frustratingly, the clip was at the very end, so it took a long time. It's like a 3-hour recording. I just put it on double speed, so it didn't take so long. But in the course of looking for the clip about me, I also stumbled across this, which, you know, it's frustrating. This is in a lot of ways a more substantive problem than any interpersonal fight. So I'll play this now. Oops, sorry, that's a lie. That's the wrong one. Sorry. Okay.
I don't want y'all to.
I done lived 10, listen, bro. I done lived 10 years without healthcare. All right.
Can you rewind that a little bit? Because I think I missed I think people missed the opening of it. Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
I just said it. Get pissed off at me, America. You don't get no Medicare for all without reparations. I don't want y'all to.
I done lived 10. Listen, bro. I done lived 10 years without healthcare. All right. But like I go however long we gotta go. But we're fighting for it. The thing is like the thing that pisses me off, bro. The thing that drives me really jail time mad is the fact that these clowns have the nerve to lecture us about struggle. And I know struggle is universal, and black folks don't have a patent on struggling. But America has a patent on making black folks struggle. So how do you fix your mouth to look at any of us who literally come from the bottom, from your perch at a $2 million home, and say some shit to me? You can name the time and place, Jimmy. I'm that dude. I am that dude. And I am so reckless. It was going to take my mother to keep me. All right, I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I would say like this. We want both. I see your comments. We want both. I do want Medicare for all, but I want Medicare for all to fall under a reparations bill.
Okay, so I played the whole thing because I wanted to make sure I didn't want to misrepresent them, right? Marcus came back and said, I want both. And I think that's important to note. I don't want anybody just to say, they don't care about Medicare for all. Right. But the initial comment is what is so frustrating. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I also recorded that at double speed. I don't even hear double speed anymore because I listen to everything on double speed. I did the same thing with that Kanye West clip that I pulled from what's his name? Joe Rogan. When I found that Kanye West was talking about how he loves socialism.
Oh, I don't know about that. I missed that.
He totally was like Bernie would have won in the middle of his.
Oh, I do remember that.
And I was like, how come nobody's talking about this? And I just got this software that allowed me to clip everything. So I clipped it crazy. But I didn't realize I was watching on double speed. So the main clip that went out into the world was Kanye West talking super fast, and everybody thought he was just having.
Was this double speed? I didn't even notice that.
That's what I'm saying. This was like 1.5 speed or something.
1.5 is slower. It's slower. It's more nuanced, sped up than twice. Yeah.
By my bad. I'm sorry about that. But I did just want to say this is something that I've been pushing back. Sorry, let me turn myself down. This is something that I've been pushing back against for a while, and I don't think anybody should be canceled over this. I'm not trying to drag anybody over this, but reparations are important. I think people on the left, including non-Black leftists, need to take it seriously instead of having this dismissive, eye-rolly attitude that sometimes folks have about it. I also think that there is a whole body of discourse where people say, we can't have any universal programs until equality is established for Black people, until we end racism, until all of these things that are when's that going to happen? I mean, lofty goals that we should be pursuing aggressively, but how long are people going to have to wait without healthcare until we get people on board with reparations? And I understand the desire to tie these things together to make sure that people are invested in reparations because they care so much about healthcare. But at a certain point, it becomes cruel to say that people shouldn't have healthcare, especially in the middle of a global pandemic, until we win the fight over reparations. And it becomes a neoliberal strategy to kneecap any progressive agenda. And they've done this with, what was it, Clyburn, who said it about, if we cancel student debt, it's going to hurt HBCUs.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought was really frustrating is a couple things in this, but one was, and I see some people in the comments saying that was Marcus, not Ben, saying that, but Ben's comment about about
Marcus said the thing about needing reparations first, and then Ben co-signed with, I've went without insurance for 10 years.
10 years, and
I can wait it out.
Yes, and that is, I think that is like the argument about why should I be paying for, I went without something. It's kind of a I understand that the argument that these things should be linked, I don't agree on the strategic level that one thing should be held out. You should hold out on Medicare for all until reparations are part of it. And I don't think it can be, Marcus was saying like Medicare for all should be under reparations, but that like deprives it of its universalism and of major buy-in. But it's interesting because there is something like, well, I made it, I survived, so other people can hold out also. And as people know, well, this means like people are dying, right, without Medicare for all. And I think also that the argument that somehow, I think that's a problematic argument. And I also think, what was the thing that I was going to say? I can't remember. There was something about what was said. Medicare for all should fall under reparations.
I wrote I think 2 or 3 years ago now, I wrote this article cataloging all of these kinds of bad faith claims. And I say, it's obviously not either or, it's both. And according to one popular iteration of this theme, Medicare for all is presumptively racist or sexist because it won't eliminate discriminatory point of service care or fully address women's reproductive needs. Perhaps you remember James Clyburn's claim that a free college and university plan would, quote, destroy historically Black colleges and universities. Maybe you've heard that the minimum wage is, quote, racist because it, quote, kills jobs and doesn't help the poor, or that it's an act of privilege to care about Wall Street corruption because only the wealthy could possibly mind what the banks do with the mortgages and pensions of millions of Americans. Perchance you've been pitched on the incredible notion that rooftop solar panels hurt minority communities. And guys, that's a real thing. Like, these are real arguments that people have been making.
Well, look at the Uber thing, right? Prop 22, which of course like harms workers and disproportionately harms people of color. And they actually try to feature people of color in their ads. Yeah. Which is like we talked about this actually with Ed Ongueso on Useful Idiots this week, which everyone should check out. It's a great episode. And Ed is an amazing journalist, a labor reporter. But I know what I was saying before, which got lost, which is that Victoria Dooley, who's a physician, she's like amazing. And she's the best speaker.
She's fabulous.
And she's really fabulous. And she was saying, is Medicare for all going to end racism? No. And she goes, ending slavery didn't end of racism, but I sure am glad to be sitting here, a free-ish Black woman. And she was like, if I'm going to be discriminated against because of systemic racism, I'd sure like to have health care while that's happening to me. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind because they're not mutually exclusive. And obviously one has a lot more support for very obvious reasons. I mean, I think what you're saying is very interesting. What you said before about how Sanders could work to make it more popular, which is different from, because what he did with Medicare for all was he exposed that it was more popular than people think. This is a bit of a different task, which is what are the numbers for Black support of reparations?
Last time I checked, I think they were like in the 40s, but it's been a while. But here's the thing:
versus what Black support of Medicare for all.
Higher than any other group, but that's after years of lobbying and an intense effort in a spike. Back in 2016, we couldn't make the argument that Medicare for all was enormously popular in the way we can now. We argued that it was the right thing to do. We argued that it would be more popular if there weren't this, healthcare industry backed campaign against it.
Right.
But we didn't have stats like this to argue back in 2016. That was work that happened relatively quickly when you consider what we were up against. And I believe a similar work could be done with reparations because there's just much more ignorance about reparations than there is about healthcare. I mean, people experience healthcare, but the history education in this country is horrible. I think, and I argued for this in the context of the campaign, that we should think about structuring a reparations argument that was kind of structured like kind of a tort reform basically tort cases, right? Because it's not amorphous. It's not just randomly, hey, white person, give me this money. It's like money that's actually owed for labor that was done and harms that continue to persist. And there are companies that earned real cash dollars based on that exploitation that persists to this day, and the way that capitalism works, and capital in the past, growing in the way that it does exponentially, like there are banks and institutions that truly, if you were to compare their growth to the money that they earned back during the slave trade, you would see that like half their worth really should be going to Black people, or there's this argument that Mississippi used to have more millionaires than anywhere else in the country because that's where you went to get rich, off slaves in the Deep South. Like all those mansions and estates that people love to get married at now, like that's slave wealth that really built this country. People have no awareness of that. And if you were saying, the government was complicit in slavery, redlining, so the government, yes, should have to pay, but also these corporations should have to pay and structure it less like, oh, random white people are having to pay. I think that you can start to get some traction here,
And tort, can you explain that to the non-lawyers? Does this mean a lawsuit?
Like a harm. It's just like a harm. So tort law, as a class, sorry, I'm dropping things. It's just like, someone hits you with a car, someone punches you in the face, like, a train.
Sure. So is it a lawsuit usually?
Yeah, a lawsuit. So like there could be some kind of like a truth and reconciliation, like a kind of a Hague, where you go through the historical record and you trace the flow of money, and you can really make. So the problem with those kinds of claims is that there's statutes of limitations.
Right. Like, even with crimes against humanity, isn't there not with that?
Well, nobody ever gives that to slaves. I mean, look what happened with all of these Holocaust cases, right? I'm sure some of them were barred, but Europe, did a solid, given, it was the very least they could do, and let them have cases against, the train, but one of the train companies that was carting people to Auschwitz recently paid out a settlement like 2 or 3 years ago. It was news, like these things are still happening. We all know about Volkswagen was complicit, and all of these companies were complicit, and the descendants of the victims have been able to rightly get money back for it from those companies. It's like a corporate lawsuit. And it's completely in line with Bernie Sanders' rhetoric about the 1% and their exploitation and capturing wealth and how we need to distribute it from them. And so all I'm saying, I don't mean to get into that deeply, but
no, it's fascinating and important. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that could be done.
Should we get rid of this, by the way? Maybe we could. No. We should get rid of you may want to hide the Negroes beware. I mean,
I wanted to stop because I wanted to make the point that like this is a graphic that was in my article. This is the same strategy they've been using forever. Yeah. Don't join up with that union. Don't do that workers policy. Don't do, like here's a bunch of KKK people telling Black people not to go to a communist meeting. Yeah. Like, which side are you on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that they think that that Black people are going to be like, well, let me take into account what the KKK is advising me in terms of my, strategy. But no, that is, as you're saying, a total trope. And something that drives me crazy. And, there was that nice K-Hive video about me where I just got to kind of remind people he did say I was built like a Cadillac. So much thanks. But the idea that I'm saying, or people on the left, white leftists are saying that, Black people can't be left. I mean, that is so off. Like that is this argument that Black people are this kind of liberal monolith that comes from liberals and is a left punching argument, and totally erases the really rich history of Black radicalism and Black leftists.
Yes.
And, from Bayard Rustin, who's not even that radical, but who was a communist, like Gerald Horne today is a great historian who is I think he presents as socialist, but there's scratch the surface. There's, scratch a socialist. Sometimes you'll find some communism in there, but that's something that I find really, again, just like disingenuous. And again, take people like it's, there's some people who I think present it that if you have views to the left of MSNBC, you're some kind of, I don't know if I can, avuncular figure, avuncular Thomas, if you will, which again is just so erasing of this tradition and of people's politics, and is so infantilizing also, like the idea that people can't have these ideas unless they're caping for white people. They can't have these ideas unless there's some kind of, they're like duped. Or, you know, and of course there's the other thing where people very conveniently invoke identity politics when it serves them, and then when it doesn't, all of a sudden the person's a sellout. Whereas when it serves them, that voice is an authentic Black voice.
And
there's an idea.
And I do want to say, you know, Marcus Farrell does, you know, amazing work with, I think, the Vote Georgia, and nobody is, you know, people make misstatements, and it's very easy now that everything is on camera to like,
even regret. If you delete it, someone's going to capture it.
Right. Like I'm not saying that he would regret. I can't speak for him at all, obviously, but you know, I don't say this to like, I guess I was just really frustrated that someone would make an issue, go out of their way to make an issue of me. I've never felt like anything other than allyship with these people. And in the same context that they're saying things that, you know, someone could very easily take issue with and say were destructive to our collective left effort, you know? And I just wish that everything didn't have to be so antagonistic and oppositional. Even putting reparations up against Medicare for All like that is like unnecessarily oppositional. Like, we could be having a really productive, useful conversation about reparations, but like, what is this?
Yeah, it's a divide and conquer, mutually
people
exclusive.
Are dying disproportionately. Black people are dying.
We're
disproportionately uninsured. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, what are we doing?
I can't recommend Victoria Dooley's thing enough, because she and what's so interesting about what she says, and again, she's a physician, is that she acknowledges that there is bias, and this comes out a lot in the medical field in terms of like assumptions about pain tolerance. So and she and the Medicare for All plan does incorporate this into it, right? Like Sanders Medicare for All includes that.
Anti-bias training, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's
also student debt cancellation. Part of that is you can get more Black doctors, Black and Latino doctors who are willing to go, especially take the pay cut and go into their communities instead of like going to be dermatologists or whatever in the big city, and actually service their communities. And it's not that you can't have bias if you're Black or brown, but it's, you know, less likely. It's mediated somewhere.
Right. And it's different from. It's interesting now that you said that. It's different from like the police, right? Which is like, it doesn't really matter what your background is on an individual level, because so many things incentivize bias. That's different in medicine. So I think it would be a lot easier to, I don't want to be dismissive about how hard it is, but I think it's not as built in, but it does have very structural roots to it. Like you were saying, debt and she was so cute, Victoria, when she did my show. She was like, you know, for instance, I have this patient and her mom says, you know, her mom travels farther so that she can see me because she doesn't have role models. She never knew like you could be Black and be a doctor. She's like, hi, Olivia. Like she's watching the Katie Albert. Anyway, that's a cute aside, but it's real. Like I totally understand it. And, you know, I think like we have to not dismiss the importance of representation and advocacy, which happens a lot.
100%. So I'm sorry. I'm just now seeing that Marcus is in the chat. Katie, do I just send him a link? I would have to have his email address, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I can do Twitter. I have Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Let us see.
Also, I see a lot of people in the comments like, this is not a referendum on Jimmy Dore's personality. This is something that is a policy suggestion. And again, I think it would be better served if we talked about it on its merits. I understand that there's a lot. I mean, it was obviously the idea came from Jimmy Dore, but again, kind of like in a parallel way to the attacking people as problematic in terms of what role they're serving, vis-a-vis white progressive. I just think it's helpful to look at what the content is.
That is not the Marcus Farrell I'm looking for.
Some people are asking how to block someone. Bree would have to put them on a timeout or ban them, which I think is totally fair if you set out some rules.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying desperately to find Marcus Farrell.
Yeah, but like Shirley Christian is saying, it's not a good organizing tool, which is I mean, that's a fine argument to make. I think that's a much more effective argument than, you know, Jimmy is
Oh,
toxic. Jimmy's COINTELPRO.
I wrote my article so that people who didn't want to deal with Jimmy could just talk about the facts that were laid out, the arguments that were laid out in the article. Yeah. And then some people were mad that I even mentioned Jimmy Dore in the article. Like, I'm also not going to try to strip him for, I think, credit that is deserved for raising this issue, because I certainly don't want to end up in some fight with him where he's like, you stole my idea. Like, that's just silly. Like, I introduced the timeline of what happened.
Yeah.
You know, I had an initial version that actually like walked through. First, he introduced it this day, and then Sam Cedar said it was a good idea a week later, and then like I walked it, but then it was just like, you know, slowing down the beginning, so I cut it. But you know, that's all it was. Like you, and that's a part. Can I just say, Katie, this is part of it that irritates me. It is perfectly possible to have this whole conversation just with the article. You could have me on to discuss it. That's an option that people could have. But it's not convenient for you if you want to make this a conversation, a referendum on Jimmy Dore and his racism and how he's just attacking AOC because she's a brown woman. Da, da, da. You can't make those arguments with me, so people don't want to talk to me about it.
Right. So they have to keep like sourcing it back to Jimmy.
Right. And it's not that I like want credit or like really want to do these interviews or like insert myself into the middle of it. But I wrote this article because I thought it was a good idea, and I wanted people to be able to engage with the article separate and apart from Jimmy if they have reasonable concerns about Jimmy. Like, I'm not arguing in the defense of everything that Jimmy said. Like I said, I have had my own little tussles with him. Believe me, I'm not trying to expose everybody's life, but like, I have just as much reason to be frustrated with him as anybody.
Yeah, and I also think that an argument that I find problematic is he has an expensive home, because this came up, Bree, when we were talking about Medicare for All, and we were talking about how it's kind of disgusting when people weaponize personal tragedy to block people from having life savings. I think I'm quoting you verbatim. From preventing people from getting life-saving treatment is unconscionable, is what you said. And so a lot of people responded by saying, oh, but Bree, because you spoke about personal tragedy and loss that you had experienced. And they're like, well, Bree is weaponizing it too. But it's so different. When you are using your personal experience to argue for the rights of others, that's the opposite of using your personal experience to argue against giving the rights to others. It's like, you know, closing when you've made it, and it's like neurotandening. Like, you shut the door behind you once you've made it, which is the opposite. And I think in a similar way, like it's to me, it doesn't speak to anything sordid that Jimmy has a lot of money. Again, to me, that's like the fact that he is not affected by this the same way people who are struggling is. I find that noble. Just like when people want to pay higher taxes.
You can be a zillionaire and you can make a separate argument about how you think there should be caps on wealth.
Sure, yes, a higher wealth tax, yes.
You can have that conversation, and I support you. I would support it. But that doesn't mean he's wrong about this.
Or hypocritical. I mean, it also doesn't mean that he's not allowed to have ideas about this. Again, it's like people do that a lot. Trust fund this, trust fund that. Dalton socialist in my case, which again, shout out to Neertanden for specializing it to the private school I went to. But to me, again, it's like, if you're a class traitor, that's great. Like, why the idea that you're a hypocrite when Bernie got a lot more, you know, when he became a millionaire because of his, you know, corrupt book sales, people are like, what a hypocrite. No, he would have been a hypocrite after becoming a millionaire. He changed his position on taxes. He changed his position on the wealthy. It's the opposite of hypocritical. Like, you are walking the walk even when it doesn't benefit you on a material level. So I would say the same thing with Jimmy. I just think that's a moot point. And if anything, it's actually in his favor, because again, he's not in the financial position that his life is not, but he had major medical problems, major medical issues, almost died. And that again is I think his outrage about this is grounded in that. And that is what we want from people. Like, that's what Sanders had because of what he experienced on both. Okay, I'm trying to stay away from the biographical, but since people invoke it, you might as well look at what it means. And honestly, when you have gone through this, I mean, look at Sanders with Palestinian issues. Like, that is beautiful and amazing that he can ground his opposition to Islamophobia and his opposition to dehumanizing Palestinian people. Part of that comes from, I think, on a visceral level, the anti-Semitism that he experienced. And again, it is so different to use the anti-Semitism you experienced to justify dehumanizing other people versus to justify not dehumanizing other people.
Yes. So sorry, Marcus is in the thing, so let me bring him into the stream. Hey, Marcus, how are you?
What's up, Bree? What's up, Katie?
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right, man. The bad guy has entered the building.
No.
Woo!
Can't be that bad. He came in.
Bad guys here, Marcus. But they're, I hope we can live in a world. I hope the lesson of all of this is that we can disagree with each other without kind of demonizing each other. That's important, right? That's important. And we have to learn how to communicate, right? So one thing that I'm going to say, Bree, is there's not much that we disagree upon, and if we do disagree upon it, you can always give me a call, straight up. Like, just hey, like, yo, Marcus, that was some BS. Let's rap, right? We don't have to take nothing to Twitter because I think that's a problem. And also, like, in the streets, that gets black people killed, right? Like, let's just have a conversation before we start ethering each other, right? Second, this is one thing that I want to say. I have been a proponent for Medicare for all longer than 90% of the people who are watching this right here, like almost since the statement was created. I've been working for Bernie I worked for Bernie in 2015, right? So I'm not what I want to make folks understand is what I've seen as being the failures of progressives getting things passed, right? This is my point. The things that get us failures is something very simple, and that is there are a bunch of African American congresswomen who do not support anything that sounds like Bernie Sanders. Point blank. So we have to figure out a way to force them in a corner. That's what I'm saying. No,
right?
I heard you, and I don't know if you heard the beginning of this call, but I agree with your broader statement that there is a lot of antagonism in certain parts of the left about the idea of reparations, that Black people need to feel like the movement as a whole has buy-in and purchase with issues that are discreetly interested to us. I just got off Sorota's there was a Michael Brooks tribute I recorded yesterday where I kind of lectured them about the same thing as well. So I completely agree with you about that. And frankly, there are a lot of Black Congress people who refuse to support HR 40. And so I would argue that the issue, you can get Black voter buy-in by supporting these kinds of issues, but the Black politicians are motivated by something else.
Right.
We saw that with how they've all covered for Joe Biden after that call leaked last week.
Oh, okay, right. So follow what I'm saying to you. In theory, just like we want to challenge what I think progressives in general forget is that problematic white neoliberals aren't the only people that need to be challenged.
100%.
Right?
I mean, that's part of what this AOC stuff is all about, right?
So follow what I'm saying to you. If there is something, if we're forcing a floor vote from basically Black and brown women, if we're forcing a floor vote and here's the thing. Notice I never said I'm against the floor vote. What I have said is if we're going to do a floor vote, let's force people in the corner so we know exactly where all of them stand. That's what I'm saying. So reparations, if you're a Black politician and you vote against reparations, then that's a very good way for a lot of younger, more progressive Black people who live in those same districts to say, hey, listen, this guy voted against your interests, right? And we can put together a package that is all encompassing, that forces a lot of people to come to a grand reckoning. That's all I'm saying. It's not that I'm trying to force one against the other. That's a false premise, right? What I'm saying is if we're going to have this one big momentous, forceful, let's force this vote, then let's go ahead and throw a lot of people in the mix and make people at play. Because here's the thing, Medicare for all by itself, as it stands, will never pass the Senate. Sorry, it is what it is. We know that.
So, sure. But okay. So the argument I've made is specific to Medicare for all because we are in the middle of a global health pandemic, and because it has exposed the vulnerabilities of our health system, and because 14 million Americans just became uninsured. So to me, this isn't about passing Medicare for all. As I argue in my article, I don't have any interest. It's not the point of doing this at all. To me, I acknowledge this is a political stunt. It's a media stunt. And it's not a stunt that's not to diminish it. I think that stunts are powerful, because to me, the crucial problem here in the fight for Medicare for all is that we have done the organized, people are for it. We have done the convincing and the persuading. People like yourself have done the hard work of making everybody on it. Black voters support Medicare for all more than any other demographic group. So that's not the issue. The issue is that for some reason, there's a huge gap between the politicians and what the people want, and no one's holding the politicians accountable to their constituents. The average voter doesn't understand that their representative doesn't actually support Medicare for all. Or, something like 30 or 40% of Biden voters thought that Biden supported Medicare for all as they cast their ballots for him, right?
Right.
So this is the question is, when the media is complicit and the media doesn't hold these people responsible, what can we do to force people to recognize that there's a lot of hypocrisy in their rhetoric, especially since a lot of these liberals are now saying, you got to pay for you got to pay for COVID treatment. Right. It's got to be free, because otherwise that's immoral, that's unethical.
That's right.
Well, the next question is, well, why is that true for diabetes, cancer, and every other disease in the world?
Right.
And all I'm saying is this is an opportunity. Now, I would be completely for a reparations floor vote push. There's some question as to whether or not that should be done at this moment, because this moment, I think there's an argument for exploiting the opportunity that this pandemic presents. And not to call it an opportunity, obviously it's an enormous tragedy, but if there's any silver lining, that's what this is. But to your point about how shady a lot of these Black representatives are about HR 40, and how I believe it was Clyburn who's been like tiptoeing away, like none of them want to be on the record supporting it, because they feel like they're especially vulnerable because they're Black in its reparations. So I think that I have no resistance to that, other than the possibility that it might dilute a message that I think is really powerful right now about healthcare.
Yeah. So this is not pushback. This is a yes and. Sure. All right. Just to make sure you understand this. And I told Bernie years ago that if he pushes reparations, he's going to force Hillary Clinton in the corner.
You're right.
Right. Yeah. I said that to him. Yeah. And then a couple of days later, he was like, I don't believe in reparations. I was like, God, bro.
Yeah. Nando set him up.
Right. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
My and to what you said is that black voters got us this White House and got the most abrasive neo-fascist out of. He's not out yet, but black voters did that. Young black voters in Georgia increased their vote by almost 50% from the ages of 24 to 18 in the state of Georgia to flip Georgia to turn blue. Right? Latino voters in Arizona did the same thing. Young black, and you know what they were all doing at the same time to make sure that their voice was heard. You know what galvanized all of them? What? Was the murder of George Floyd. Right? Just follow what I'm saying to you. You said you talked about the moment. Yes, there's a global pandemic. There's also a police pandemic.
I agree 100%.
Right? So follow what I'm saying to you. We are all people who are suffering under oppression, right? Now white folks have to deal with fascism for the first time, and fascism is nothing but racism for white people. Like, just follow what I'm saying to you. If we push something that will galvanize both, right? Because here's the thing, black voters care about it, but black voters don't turn out for Medicare for all yet.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%.
Right. I just want to put. I just want to push. Like,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So if you want to take, so for instance, so this was part of the argument I was making over the summer. It frustrated me deeply knowing that so many people were out in the streets, knowing that Black Lives Matter has as part of its program Medicare for all, right? It frustrated me deeply that these things that the people in the streets weren't making specific. Well, I won't say speaking as a whole, but certain policy demands that I felt like could have been piggybacked on weren't really being talked about. And there was no conversation at all about holding Joe Biden to task, that Joe Biden had to earn the votes of the people in the street by committing to certain things, the George Floyd Act, whatever it is, some aspect of it, whatever it is. And that really frustrated me, but I was reluctant to say that out loud because I didn't want to be accused of shoehorning a non-Black issue, right, onto a Black movement. So I largely kept my mouth shut, but I felt the same way that you are feeling now, that, you know, Medicare for all happens to be a priority of mine, especially given COVID. Right. But I perfectly appreciate that criminal justice issues are a priority of other people, given America. Right. And that these things can be woven together. And I think that particularly in light of what was revealed on that call, right, where Sherilyn Ifill was like, here are 3 things from the George Floyd Act.
That call was a hot mess. That call shouldn't have even happened, but I'm not.
Yeah, but he did make a good point about biracial commercials. Never forget.
Right.
But Mark is like, she listed 3 things he could do by executive order. 3 things from the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and he brushed them off. And then the Black media establishment and the white media establishment, but I don't expect more from them. The Black media establishment completely gave him cover, buried the story as quickly as possible. April Ryan's out here talking about, well, my source who was in the meeting told me it wasn't disrespectful, it was just passionate. You know, we have the tape, honey. Like, we don't need to rely on your source.
If I may, Bree, this is something that I do want to say. And by the way, Katie, thank you for having me on.
This is Bad Faith Pod.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I forgot. I'm looking at both.
I know, because we both have shows. But I will take credit for texting Bree that you were in the chat.
Okay,
well, I did appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me on, Bree, for the Bad Faith. Listen, Pat,
you have to come on my show too.
Yeah, I will. I'm down. It's not. We talk about moments, and I want to reemphasize this moment. Right? Like, if we're going to go ahead and, what's the right word? I don't want to say, if we're going to go ahead and make this sort of final boss move, right? Because this is a final boss move. If we force Nancy Pelosi, if those women force Nancy Pelosi to do anything, 1, there's a high likelihood it's not going to pass. 2, they've just wasted a lot of political capital for a future play that we hope works out. Sure. Right. So if we're going to do that, then let's just dump everybody into it.
Well, I'm for, now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of like the idea, especially given the optics of Nancy Pelosi and all of them kneeling in their kente cloth earlier this year.
Come on.
I love the idea of saying you also have to pass didn't they already pass? What is the status of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act?
It's going to pass. But I think it has passed, or no, it's passed in certain states. I don't think it's been a federal thing yet.
Okay.
Not to belay this argument, but if we're going to talk about the one thing that put Americans out in the streets during COVID, we're talking about Black folks' issues, right? Sure. Right, and one of the issues, like even Clyburn, instead of HR 40, Clyburn is pushing this 10, 20, 30 thing that has nothing to do with reparations for Black folks who suffered under who are descendants of slaves in America. The only point that I've made, and first I will say this right here, Ben has to talk for himself. So, and y'all see the vibe of clickbaity. So they're going to clown me, but I'm gonna clown them too later on. And watch my podcast when you can. Don't just watch it when you want to see some problematic shit. Watch my. But what I am going to say is the whole purpose of me saying this is that if we're going to shoot all of it out, if we're going to do everything, if we're going to make these brown and Black women, because we're asking the squad to do this, and this is a bunch of brown and Black women, right?
And Mark Pocan.
Yeah, Mark Pocan, yeah.
Yeah. And,
who's a white dude.
Yeah, right. He's
the token white dude.
Yeah. And white X-Men, right? White men X, whatever, right? If we're gonna do that, then we need to get all of it out of it that we can. So I got something to work with in the South when I try to push progressive candidates against these people, right? Give me some ammunition too. You dig what I'm saying? Like, that's what I like to have that ammunition to be like, hey, you know what? You neoliberal so-and-so. You had a chance to support reparations and Medicare for all. So not only do you not want health care, but you don't want us to get what we're owed from the repercussions of slavery. I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from.
I'm already sold. Just like when David Sirota was like, what about this other stuff? I was like, yeah, throw it in. I'm sold. Now I don't know. I'm a little less sold on reparations as opposed to some of these other criminal justice issues, just because, like I was saying to Katie before, I don't know if you heard, I do feel like we need to be doing more work. Like, I will judge Bernie hard for not pushing reparations and moving the Overton window on that the way he was able to move the Overton window on
M4A. Yep.
But there are a whole lot of progressive issues that Bernie didn't foreground, maybe wrongly, but it's not just Black issues. It's like sex work. Like, there's a lot of things where there's an argument that we got to be vocal about it and move the Overton window before it becomes like a linchpin of the policy pitch. And if you're not doing that, I think you still should be judged, right? I think Bernie should be talking about sex work. I think that Bernie should be talking about reparations.
That's right.
But because I think part of the rhetorical power of doing Medicare for All is because the polls are so strongly on our side. It is easy to say, hey, Congressperson, 88% of Democrats want this. Why don't you? I think that similarly, for some aspects of criminal justice reform, that is true as well, especially these things that can be done by executive order. So the ask is, hey, Biden, why not do this? You absolutely can. So I'd have to think through what those pieces were, because again,
it's not easy. Bree is not easy, right? Like I'm not sitting up here saying what I'm saying is a very easy thing to even think about, right?
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that listen, first off, if Bernie Sanders had said in 2015, in December of 2015, reparations now, there'll be white guys in gentrified parts of America rocking their man buns, rocking reparations now t-shirts as we speak. And this wouldn't even be an argument, right? You understand what I'm saying? And also, if he had said that back then, we might not have had a Trump.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because at the same time, I think that would have, Hillary, well, whatever. Obviously, opportunists are going to go after him for anything. And they probably would have used that as an example of him being radical, out of touch, just like they opportunistically then said he was bad on race issues, which coming from a Clinton is kind of rich. But can I just ask you guys one question?
Yeah.
So to me, this is like a unique theatrical moment. And also, I think, Bree, am I right? At first, I know what your position is on this. And I'm sorry, maybe everyone in the chat understood what you were saying, but you said like you're not doing this because you want Medicare for All to pass. You're saying like that's not the outcome. You don't want Medicare for All to pass, right? But it's not. I'm just not so
naive as to think that
this is right. That's not
thinking is going to get us there, right? And so there are a lot of people whose objection to the floor vote plan is Medicare for All won't pass. I'm like, nowhere in my article did I argue that this was going to get Medicare for All passed in the short term.
Right.
What it's going to do is start to close this gap. We're closing the gap.
Exposing
the extent to which, we're not being represented in Congress.
That's right.
But to the extent that it serves a theatrical role, this is what I would I guess ask about. Like, given that for whether or not Bernie should have done this or other people should have made reparations a bigger part of the leftist movement, leftist demands, I think that well, two things. One is I don't think Sanders moved the Overton window among the people. I think he moved it among politicians and framed it in a way. But from what I can tell, people were already for Medicare for All. They thought it wasn't viable, but they thought it was a good idea. So what he did is he kind of, I think, moves the Overton window among political and media elites. I mean, barely, but because these guys, the media elites, but he exposed it, right? He exposed that this was not a radical thing.
Yeah.
So from what for me, like the value of the forcing the Medicare for All vote is that you can point to the disparity that you were talking about, Bree, the gap, right, between what the people want and what the politicians are demanding, which doesn't, I don't think, with reparations, that won't happen, right?
Yeah,
so just from a theatrical perspective, like not because it doesn't have the merits, but I think
that's why I'm saying that we need to do them talking about it more. And I'm cautious about saying that because so often politicians use that as an excuse just to not act. Oh, the people aren't with it, so I'm not going to. So that's why I'm saying, if you have an awareness that this thing is good, but we're not there in terms of the polling numbers, I expect every other word out of your mouth to be sex work reparations, until we get there the same way that was what you did with Medicare for All. And it's hard, but if you're if you're an older gentleman like Bernie Sanders, if you like you're at the end of your career, or you've left Congress, or you're independent now. Like, it's really your responsibility, I think, to be talking about these sorts of things. Like, spend your 9th decade on Earth talking about sex work and reparations.
That's right.
They'll build temples in your honor when you pass.
If I may, Katie and Bree, we got to remember that Martin Luther King was polling at less than 20% before he died. His approval rating, right? He became everybody's hero once he died, right? Some of us, and yes, we are political animals. I've managed over 20 campaigns in my life. Bernie went from raised Medicare for All's popularity 20 points during 2016, like in the general public. So there was an effect of him saying it over and over again. Just like the more that we talk about defunding the police, no matter what you think, the more that we talk about it, the more the polling numbers goes up across America, right? Barack Obama didn't do anything but elevate the popularity of defund the police, right? Right. That happened. Yeah.
The fracking stuff worked in the other direction. Joe Biden talking about how he doesn't support a fracking ban made Democrats support fracking like 20% more than they did before.
Yes. So my point is this right here. Oh man, I gotta be careful about my ethos here, right? Like giving out too much ethos. But my ethos is very simple, right? Like, do we stop on not trying to make right what happened to indigenous and black people in America just because of the polling numbers? That's and here's the thing. When we put millions we don't put millions of dollars of advertising dollars and the money that Tad made or Jeff or all these people make off of these campaigns. We don't put that same kind of money and education, public education out there for issues that are right by the world, right? Medicare for All didn't even have a lot of money behind it when it comes down to pushing it out. It's people like us three that are like talking about it all the time. So what I'm saying is, just because it's not polling well doesn't mean it's a thing that can't be taught. If Barack Obama had came out last week and said, I might not believe in what defund the police means, but here's what it means. I might not believe in defund the police slogan, but here's what it means. Right.
Reinvesting.
Then guess what? Not a neoliberal in America would have came out against it anymore.
100%. And people, I'm so glad that you said that. I've often said if people spent a fraction of the time that they spend debating whether or not defund is a good slogan, actually talking about what defund means, we have defunded.
It's easy. It's easy. So back to reparations. If you are going to force these black and brown women to risk their political effectiveness, because that's what they're doing. The only thing this is going to do to Nancy Pelosi right now is just piss her off. And
I would push back against that a little bit. I do think that people are overstating the downsides here by a lot. Because look, the whole argument that AOC was making online with Justin Jackson was, well, we're going to fight for committee appointments and use our leverage for other things. And then look what happened yesterday or this morning, whatever that was. She got mollywalloped in the vote for her to be on the EC Economics and Commerce, is it, committee? And so it didn't work. Playing nice didn't work. Now, maybe that was because of what she said on The Intercepted. I don't know what happened there, but she got mollywalloped. So what is the downside that we're talking about? We're talking about them losing their seats? I don't really think so. I don't think AOC or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib are going anywhere. They're beloved in their districts. Might they not get committee appointments? That's possible, but they're already not getting committee appointments. So then it becomes, what's more important? AOC said, I would be happy to be a one-term congresswoman when she was running for office. So what's more important? Her like taking the stand? That's what she said mattered.
That's right. That's
pushing it through, and maybe that isn't as influential going forward, but isn't, if anything is important enough, isn't criminal justice issues, isn't the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic where 14 million people just lost their health insurance, is it now the time for Custer's last stand, if ever? Right.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to add on to this because I agree with you. If it's Custer's last stand, right, I want black people to be right there in them horses behind them. That's all I'm saying. Like, if we're going to do this, let's do it.
Yeah, I think
let's add the Green New Deal to it. Like, let's make an omnibus bill that literally has, like, let's go ahead and just do it. Like, make our progressive stand for all of our crap. And it's not crap. right now. And if we're forcing this vote, then let's make it happen. And then we all have better talking points as a campaign strategist. I'm going to have so many talking points to get neoliberals out of office in Georgia and out of office in Florida and out of office in Alabama and places that we've historically had problems with neoliberals winning seats.
Yeah.
Like that's it. So
yeah, I know. Green New Deal arguably isn't so, I mean, and by the environment's always collapsing, so it's always relevant, but it's a little less, it's a little less targeted to this particular moment. I think that you're right about Black Lives Matter stuff because of the protests. And I think that you're right. And I think that Medicare for All obviously has salience right now too. I could be swayed either way on lumping Green New Deal into this particular project. But I think that because, and I say this all the time, because neoliberals have put Black women on a pedestal, because they had kind of quartered themselves put themselves in the corner with their identity politics arguments, there's an enormous power in being Black asking for something. Now, that power is often cut off at the knees by all the people in that call, not all of them, but a lot of the Black leadership who runs cover for Biden and other neoliberal candidates of all colors. But rhetorically, in terms of the press, in terms of our influence, you can be a lot of things. You can be racist against a lot of people, but crossing Black people tends to get you in trouble still in America if you know, in the public. And I think that's something that could really bolster this argument and draw attention to this fight and get a lot of folks who otherwise don't care. Like a lot of these media figures are like meh about progressive stuff, but go really hard in the paint for Black stuff. Your Angela Rise and your Don Lemon, like they will act right if it's about a Black thing. And so I think there's some real strategic value to coupling something about BLM and criminal justice issues to this plan. I think that's additive. I think that's useful.
Listen, I'm saying reparations because that's what I fight for.
Sure.
If it's defund the police, I'm not going to back away from reparations. But what I am saying is it's time for progressives to create a coalition with Black people that they have not had. And if you're going to force Black and brown, if Jimmy Dore is asking Black and brown women to go out and force something to happen with a white woman who's from San Francisco, who's rich and don't give a flying, then guess what? We need to add something to it that comes back to our community. And we just created this coalition that has never been seen. I swear to God, it's going to be the scariest thing for neoliberals to have random Black people being like, why you didn't support reparations? And I just learned about Medicare for All. Right, you didn't like that either?
That's the scariest thing. Random Black people saying, why aren't you giving me Medicare for All? Because that's going to hit them in their pocketbooks a lot harder than these criminal justice issues. Like, eventually they'll probably give way on criminal justice stuff because that doesn't hurt the corporate bottom line. But the Medicare for All stuff being wedded to it is like their worst nightmare.
Yeah,
so that's talking about Medicare for All is their worst nightmare.
Yeah, I question that one that last statement, your latter statement about whether these corporate interests, you got to understand how wedded Democrats have been to criminal justice for years, right? Like, Bill Clinton took a whole campaign break to go kill a Black man just so he could.
Intellectually, who was literally not. He asked for when he ate his last meal, he asked if he could save it for later. Like he was so, it was so disgusting. And like you said, he took a flight during his campaigning. Yeah. I was going to say, when you were talking about the cost, it's like, if you say something racist, obviously racist, people will talk about it in the media. But if you do a policy that is racist in effect, though not necessarily in discourse, nothing will happen. Right. One of the best examples being Medicare for All, being Fight for 15, which disproportionately, of course,
38% of Black people would get a raise if we had a $15 minimum wage.
So
dare I say, Katie, I think we have a better chance of passing Medicare for All if we attach something Black to it.
I think that's a fair point. It has to be done sensitively. As we've said. But part of what I was trying to do with this race speech that I've now been talking about a lot on these podcasts that Bernie never ended up giving was I wanted him to connect the 99 to 1% rhetoric with the fact that all of that wealth in America was built on the backs of Black people. Like, I want him to go to Mississippi and stand next to some slave, I don't know where he wanted to stand, but somewhere in Mississippi, which used to be home to more millionaires than anywhere else in America, and has so much historic relevance, and really draw the connection from where we were to how we got here, and at whose expense. And so that when he says the 1%, people are also hearing a white 1%, the people who've been exploiting us for a really long time, because these things are interconnected. And I agree with you. Like, there are all sorts of ways to make people feel like they have more buy-in and purchase than a movement. And I don't judge Black people, some Black people, older Black people mainly, for not feeling seen in Bernie Sanders movement. I think there's sometimes too much defensiveness among Bernie types about the fact that older Black people weren't on board. And they talk about that group as though they're just like constitutionally unable to see clearly and like da-da-da-da-da. But truly not that much effort or outreach was done. And I have a lot of confidence about how much more we can do, but it's not going to happen overnight. People, you know this better than anyone, Marcus. You have to go to communities long in advance. You have to be seen. The campaign did this with Latinos, and that's why we did so well. Because Chuck Rocha was on the campaign, and
Chuck's a bad boy.
He was there like a year in advance.
Mexican redneck, as he calls himself.
How did we get Nevada? So like we were there a year in advance.
Right.
Having cookouts and soccer games a year solidly in the communities in advance.
Brianna, if I may, white progressives need to understand something about older Black voters. White progressives want the world to be right. Black older voters want the world to work. And there's a difference.
What do you mean by that? Unpack that for us.
There's a very big difference. An insurrection, a changing of the guard, something that is not normal, is dangerous to older Black voters because of all the things that they've had to go through just to have basic democracy, right? They saw their parents and their grandparents get killed for trying to just vote. So sometimes just being able to have the right to vote is okay with them. I can vote. I'm not looking no deeper than that, right? We as progressives, we want the world to be right. We want change that's systemic, that lasts for a long time. We want to be able to say Medicare for all. If someone that they've had a relationship with in their community for over 20, 30, 40 years says to them, well, that's radical, right? Even though most Black people come from the Black spiritual radical position, they don't necessarily come from a radical position in their politics because they just want to live. The problem that Medicare for all proponents don't do is they don't explain how Medicare for all makes Black people live longer.
Sure,
right?
100%.
And that comes from the relationship building, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I did it 4 years before you did, and you did it well, like for the years that you did it.
Yeah. A little blip in the radar.
Yeah, explaining to Black folks what Medicare for all means for their community could have came from Bernie with a hardcore push for years, right? He should have never left South Carolina.
Yeah.
If Bernie never left South Carolina, let me tell you something. If he just stayed there and pushed Medicare for all when nobody else was even talking to him, because you know these neoliberals don't talk to Black people off years.
Yeah.
Right? He could have been there just saying, okay, well, you don't have to vote for me, but this is what Medicare for all means.
Yeah.
In South Carolina.
Part of what I love, I met Bernie actually in Mississippi. Because I was covering him for The Intercept when he was giving the 50-year anniversary remarks for the 50-year anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination. And he gave a speech there that wasn't really covered because there was you remember, he said something about Barack Obama losing seats under Barack Obama, and the media said
business model.
Yeah. But he gave a really good speech about how Mississippi is ignored and how we need to have a 50-state strategy, and it's the blackest state in the union, but everyone just refers to it as red, and how all you need is 15% of white voters to win Mississippi, but the Democratic Party cares so little about the state that it doesn't even really try. I wrote an article back in 2018 that there were 2 Senate seats up in Mississippi the same way that there's 2 up in Georgia right now, and if we had won them, we would have had the Senate. And I looked at all the FTC filings, and the DCCC had barely spent a dime on either race.
That's right.
That's
right.
And so Bernie understood that, and I really wished I wanted him in this Mississippi speech to speak to that understanding, like, and to really connect all of these themes, which frankly fit so well with kind of these broader Black themes. That's why I instinctively liked Bernie.
Listen, Bree,
a little bit better.
Bree, listen, Bernie would have been better for Black people than any neoliberal. I say that every day, but you also know that I will flame throw his ass in a heartbeat.
And none of us were firms that were allowed.
Yeah. So what I guess this will be my last point.
Yeah.
With my everything that I'm pushing right now, the only thing I'm trying to figure out is this intersection between Black voters and progressive folks, right? Because until we do that, right? And right now, even though Black folks do support Medicare for all because they're learning it, it's still a white issue to them.
Yeah.
Because man, I want my stimulus check, bro. Black fathers want to be able to take care of their kids, right? Black mothers want to be able to maintain equitable pay, right? We still got we got a minimum wage of $5 down here in Georgia, right? Like, there are things that are more immediate. Crime. If I get shot, Medicare for all ain't gonna help me if I'm dead by the time I get to the hospital, right? Like, there are things that are important. Until we figure out an intersection and we beat the neoliberals in the Democratic Party, unless we're talking about leaving the Democratic Party and doing something else,
which we should discuss.
That's a conversation. But if we're going to still operate in the Democratic Party, we got to figure out how we have an intersection between progressives and Black voters, and there is no other way. And trust me when I say that, like, there are people that you and I mutually know that hate my guts and hated my guts, Bree, when I said, y'all can't win no election without Black people, man. What are y'all trying to do?
Yeah. So look, you know that I agree with you. I do think that there are truly bad faith attacks about Bernie with respect to race that I think some white leftists are so bristly and sensitive about that it's hard for them to distinguish the good faith criticisms. And, that's not letting them off the hook. I'm just saying that out loud so that the ones that are listening can start to just drill down a little harder and believe that there are good faith criticisms out there and that they can't win without taking them into account. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Look, I do want to come back to the original issue though for just one moment and say, look, I have never had anything but like respect and affection for Ben Dixon. And I did not realize we had a complicated relationship or that he had any kind of negative feeling toward me. We are not close by any means. I've only met him in person once. There are things that he says that I disagree with, but I respect his position. Like I said before you came on, pushing for people to vote for Biden. Like, I get it. It wasn't my position, but I get it. And I never said anything because there wasn't really anything to say. I know what he thinks. I know what I think. That was that. And so I will say that, I don't want you to hold you responsible for his comments, but it would be nice if when things like that were said, there was a little pushback, because otherwise it's complicit. You know what I mean?
Check this out. I'm gonna tell you something. I've defended you on my show before. I have. And if we're gonna keep it 1,000, if first, yes, sorry. I should have said that might be bad faith, but on the same token, I'm gonna just say I apologize for not saying anything at that moment that was wrong. On the same token, I'm also going to add on that I've defended you to a lot of on my show and to a lot of people that we mutually know many times. Our show, I will say this right here, our show is full of opinions, right? Like, and what is a little bit different about Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap is that we just don't care. And maybe that ethos got to him a little bit, maybe not. I can't talk for him. I'm not going to talk for him because Ben will call me up in 5 minutes and be like, why are you talking for me if he doesn't agree with that, right? But I am going to have the conversation with him, and I'll have the conversation on air. This is what Bree thinks, and we'll clip this whole thing right now and say, this is what Bree thinks, what you got to say, and I hope you watch it, right? But when it comes down to our show, right, there are 3 different perspectives of cisgender Black men, and that's something that does not happen in politics whatsoever, right? And I hope that there was other points of that show and many other shows that you and Katie could watch and be like, wow, you know what? Them brothers just said something right there. That'll make me feel good too. But for me I didn't mean to be complicit, because to be honest with you, I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's how you feel, right? But it wasn't, I'm going to protect you. And if it was in person and somebody's trying to snatch your purse or fight you or some shit like that, we gonna go at it, Bree.
I appreciate that, Marcus. Honestly, it feels so much better.
I know, I'm getting goosebumps watching this, by the way.
Just like be humans. And so I hope that I can have a conversation with Ben soon. I feel very de-escalated. I'm going to take down.
No, that's not clickbaity. Keep that up. Keep that energy.
That's going to harm my show. How dare you, Bray? How dare you take away that
okay,
clickbait?
Whatever you want. I can be honest about the fact that there's a part of me that was posting out of vindictiveness, right? Like, you did something wrong too. Like, so I was willing to take.
Oh, no, you tried to flame through everybody. Like, and here's Marcus. Here's what Marcus said. I saw you. I saw you. You made me have to come out my bag for a second, sis. Hey, by the way, that's a dope sweater you got on.
Thank you. I hope I sent him one for Christmas, but I don't think it's arrived yet. I've been trying to keep it a secret, but also I only brought home like 4 sweatshirts, so I gotta wear them.
Hey,
sorry. Can I just give you one piece of credit? I just want to give you also credit, because I know when I host my show, it's hard to push back, especially if you have a relationship with someone. So I just think I'm just saying it is hard, and people should know that it's awkward to push back, and we all have to do it, but it's hard. So
I got a question. Can we do something real quick? Can we play? Sure. Can we play a game real quick? And it's not a game; it's actually serious. You can cuss me off if you want to. Bree, do you think that you are a person who holds and advertises white supremacy and advertises white thought? And do you think you're a black face for a white progressive movement?
I don't. And, it's funny because there are times when I see people using an article that I've written or kind of deploying me, tagging me in an argument that I don't co-sign. And it gives me pause. And when I see it, I tend to say, no, that's not it. But I think the reality is that because of the way we have structured the discourse, where there is added purchase to belonging to an identity group, sometimes it's earned and it makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? Sometimes we're talking about Detroit, and a person from Detroit is more able to speak about Detroit. Sometimes you're Black, and we're talking about Black issues, and your perspective is more valid. But also, there's plenty of people in Detroit who don't know what the hell they're talking about, and maybe somebody from Michigan, from Wisconsin, summered there as a kid, or went to college there and has something to say, right? So it's complicated, because I never want to be like, don't listen to the Black person or their perspective, or devalue the perspective that's added by identity. But at the same time, it's not a be all end all. It's one of many lenses that add to your perspective and your ability to comment on an issue. So I know that white progressives often feel empowered by my existence, because there are arguments they want to make that I think are right and good, but they're often shut down on, like Medicare for all is a racism. Bernie Sanders wasn't, all the kinds of bad faith accusations about Bernie Sanders. And, I feel sometimes mixed about that. But as long as it's an argument that I think is right and good, I understand the impulse to want to use me as a shield, because they're put in a society that says otherwise. It's very easy for their opinion to be discounted because they aren't Black, even if they're right. Right. I am told that something I've said isn't right because I'm not Black. Like, people have assumed that I'm not Black without looking me up, or sometimes they do look me up and they're just so delusional. They're like, oh, a white woman wrote this article and da, 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 da. And it's insanity, because that's how locked into the identity politics tropes people are. Here's one last thing I'll say. I'll keep it brief. I sometimes feel a certain freedom of expression because I was raised in a somewhat unorthodox household by two Black parents who were very proud and uncomplicated in their Blackness, but who were nerds. Like my mom in particular was a big, weird nerd who was raised by a Nation of Islam Black radical and a 16-year-old Black hippie in Cleveland, Ohio. And I have never felt like any pressure in my own household to conform to any one kind of Blackness or standard of Blackness, at the same time that I've always felt deeply proud of being Black and always sought out relationships with my own community. And so it's really a trip to me. Sometimes I encounter folks who I think are actually more insecure in their Blackness than I am, who presume that I'm insecure because of some aspect of how I present or because of my politics. And it just is always really charming and funny to me because I almost feel empowered not to conform to somebody's idea of what I should be because I know that I'm Black and I love Blackness and it's just such a non-issue for me in my life. So when people say stuff like that, I just kind of chuckle to myself. You know, it doesn't really bother me, but I wish that we could do without those kinds of attacks when there's like substantive criticisms we can make of each other when we simply disagree. Because I don't feel any pressure to prove how Black I am, and I think it's interesting when some folks try to challenge me in that way because it's just not something that I'm insecure about.
Well, then you should have had your ass on clickbaity political thirst trap a long time ago.
I'd be happy to come on.
I do also think that there's a gender component. When you're a Black woman, it's kind of assumed that you're doing the bidding of white, especially white progressive men.
Yeah, it seems that way.
And yeah, again, I'm gonna push
back. I'm gonna push back on that one. If we're keeping it 1,000,
about you, I'm saying that there is, in general, I would say.
No. The reason why I say that is because neoliberals don't utilize Black women in a very negative way. Nobody really understands how to talk about Black people besides Black people. And to answer that, I'm not completely disagreeing with you. What I am going to say, because it's what the hoteps would say, they'll call it the bed winching.
Yeah,
right?
I've been called that.
Yeah, they'll call it the bed winching.
I've never dated a white man, but it hasn't stopped anybody.
Yeah. So if we're gonna keep it 1,000, I'm gonna keep it 1,000, Katie, and respond to that. I think it's ignorant people, but I don't think it's a generalized term because when you talk to Black men about a lot of Black men about our Black women, they're ferocious about it. See, I gotta push back on certain narratives around Black maleness when it comes down to our community because we got blamed for voting for Trump when we didn't. Right?
I push back against that hard.
Yeah. I know you did. So here's the thing, though. I know you did, right? And there is a misconception that just because you're loud doesn't mean there's a bunch of loud people that agree, other people that agree with you, right? It's a bunch of loud, wrong people when it comes down to perception of Black women. But that's not how our community thinks. Maybe white people think like that. Maybe white men think like that. But Black men in general in Georgia, I mean, we know who Stacey Abrams is, no matter if you think she's a moderate or a progressive or not. Black men support her and voted for her at a high rate. Right, we know who the NSA UFOT and all the organizers that are literally about to save democracy down here in Georgia. They're Black women leading that, and we know that. So I'm very, not to completely knock what you're saying, but I'm very careful about the perception outside of Black people when it comes down to how we talk and how we present to each other. Right.
Let me ask you, why do you? I'm trying to rack my brain for examples of people who've had this said about them. I mean, obviously, there's Candace Owens. There's what's her name? Diamond and Silk. People have said what they've said about me and Senator Turner. And I'm having a hard time. Obviously, there's people like, Clarence Thomas and some of these Black male Republicans, but they don't seem to be like as reviled. Even Clarence Thomas, who's like the worst. But what's his name? Tim what's the Black?
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott.
Yeah.
No one really talks about Tim Scott with the same kind of like People hate me. Black people, there's a class of Black people that hate me more than they hate Tim Scott.
Right. I mean, okay, so nobody's more hated than Clarence Thomas. Number one.
He's not in the discourse. Look, the fact that Joe Biden, went to bat for him to be a Supreme Court justice never really affected him in his campaign. Right off the bat, Anita Hill.
Yeah, she's talking about Joe Biden, though.
But that's the thing. Like his association with Clarence Thomas wasn't disqualifying. It wasn't disqualifying. It didn't hurt him in the least. And I know that's a somewhat attenuated example, but I'm just saying when we talk about like hateful, Black Republicans who betrayed their people, we're always talking about Candace Owens and a slew of women.
I mean, I will say this right here.
Black leftist men, I will say, none of the Black leftist men are being called Candace Owens of the left. They're not getting called, Tim Scott.
That's because they're afraid that we're gonna come and beat them, find them in their house and beat them up.
Oh, come on.
No, what I will say is Malcolm X said this right here, and that's a very true statement. Black women are the most disrespected women in the world.
Yeah.
So if you say when it comes down to politics, I just say society.
But can I just clarify? I wasn't talking about Black men, like Black men's view. I'm saying the people who, a lot of white wino moms, right? We'll call Brie a sellout. White soccer mom. So I was just saying that I think that a lot of times the vitriol is directed at like Brie, right? And there isn't the vitriol is not directed at like Adolph Reed, who is much more of a class reductionist than Brie is. Yeah. And Cornel. So Cornel West and Adolph Reed, from what I heard, like don't get labeled as doing the bidding of white people. The way that like Brie does. That's right. All I'm
okay. So okay, two things. I'm gonna stick to my Malcolm X quote, right? I'm gonna say this right here. I'm gonna say Black people. I talked to Dr. West I talked to Dr. West a lot. Matter of fact, he's right there.
Oh, a photo of him? I thought he was behind you, like a horror movie.
Brie has gone through, I've seen it. Brie has gone through fire in the past 2 years. Nina has gone through fire for the past. Nina, right? Has gone through fire. I mean, I've known Nina was going through fire when I first met her, just from switching from Hillary to Bernie, right? Like she's gone through fire. What I'll say is this right here. When you're Black and you don't subscribe, because I would be hard pressed to say that Cornel West didn't get called all those names plus some when he was telling the truth about Barack Obama and not supporting Hillary Clinton at the same time. He got called names and death threats at the same time. And unlike other Black thought leaders, he kept on his guard instead of switching over and becoming a neoliberal. So I'm going to say Black people, but with a special reverence to, like, yes, people think they can take advantage of Black women and they won't defend themselves. And another reason why is because they put so many of Black men in jail that we're not checking them. Probably like maybe I did today, but I'm going to talk to Ben about it and we're going to talk about it, right? But it is what it is, because I'm not dissing Ben whatsoever. That's my brother and I love him to death. So what I'll say is this right here. When you are a Black progressive, point blank, Black woman, Black man, I was ostracized like crazy in the South for being the first Black person to go below the Mason-Dixon line and say the word Bernie Sanders, right? Like I was the #1 first Black person to do that. And some of my family members canceled me, right? When you're Black and you don't go with the status quo across the board, you're going to get names called at you, right? You're going to lose opportunities, right? You're going to get called a radical. You're going to we ain't radical. The Panthers were radical. The Panthers weren't even radical because they were feeding people, right? Like we're not radical. We just want justice, right? And when you speak in those lenses as a Black person, I'll end it on this. When you speak on that in those lenses as an African American progressive, no matter who you are, where you are, and what you're doing, you're gonna get trashed, because that's why we need our white progressive friends to help us out more. That's why we need one bill to get Black people and Medicare for all together on the same page. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I'm so appreciative of you for joining us, because I think you've really added a lot to this conversation. And this feels like a step forward instead of the circular firing squad. So
Yeah,
thank you, Marcus. I told Katie we'd be on for like a short period of time.
Do the same thing with you.
2 hours.
Yeah.
But I really do appreciate you both joining us here today, and hopefully we'll be able to do this a lot more because now I know how to work StreamYard.
Hey.
Thank you guys and listeners. We're growing our YouTube channel, so if you could please subscribe so we don't miss our content. Our producer Ben has been uploading video clips of our episodes pretty regularly, and if you are not a subscriber to the Patreon, it's a way for you to see clips of paywalled episodes. So do subscribe, and we are going to be using this channel a lot more regularly.
And to subscribe, by the way, you press subscribe and then you press the bell.
Thank you, Katie. And do you want to tell people where they can find you, Marcus?
Yeah, you can find me at Marcus for America on Instagram and Twitter, Old Man Politic on Twitch, Doc Reality on PlayStation 5 and 4. Rock with me because I'll be playing that Madden. And also make sure you follow. This is important. Make sure you follow Clickbaity, Political Thirst Trap. That's C Thirst Trap on Twitter and Instagram. So you can watch our journey as we get traverse getting canceled every day.
And Katie, I know everybody here knows you, but do you want to tell them where to find you as well?
YouTube.com/The Katie Halper Show. And we stream, if you've seen my show, Bree is like a very regular guest. We stream Sunday nights at 7 p.m. and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m.
Okay, so when we stream, we're going to make sure not to overlap with Katie.
Yeah, exactly. None of that divide and conquer. Yeah, the man is not. But we need to do a people schedule.
Right.
So we can see when people are streaming. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both. Have a good night and please stay safe. Okay.
Yes, you too. Thanks. And this was moving to watch, by the way, the rapprochement that happened between you guys. So
I'm glad it happened. I feel good. I didn't like all that hate and edginess in my heart. I feel lighter and good now.
We need to direct it. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I just said me too.
I was going to say that they're useful targets. We need to unite and hate on neolibs together. It's a beautiful project. Yeah.
Plan Pelosi's downfall.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Peace.